Hello, my name is Ron Saavedra. Today I'll be going over 5 different exercises that you can do. First, I'll be teaching you how to do them, which means important cues to help you complete them as best as you can, some common errors and how to avoid them, and then we're going to go over different regressions and progressions of the exercise to best suit your needs. So without further ado, let's get rolling. We're going to be doing the clamshell exercise. We're going to start this exercise at its most regressed form, at its most basic. We're going to work our way up to its most commonly seen form, and then we're going to progress into a more difficult progression. This is a great exercise that teaches you how to use your glutes, specifically your glute med and your external rotators underneath your larger glute maximus. The reason why this is commonly seen in many training programs is that it increases the strength of these muscles, as well as alleviates some issues of IT band syndrome, which is typically pain located at the lateral side of the knee that occurs due to a tightened case of your glute med and those external rotators pulling the IT band apart, which manifests in, like I said, in that pain in the knee. So we're going to start with the most regressed form. This is the most basic one. You're going to start here. You're going to incorporate some oblique work too to make sure your spine isn't sagging down like this. Everything's in line and neutral. You're simply going to rotate up. Keep in mind that I don't want to see twisting of the spine like this, right? Because that's not incorporating any glute work. You're just rotating your spine without any purpose. So make sure that you go as far as you can, open up as far as you can, like me, right here. This is how far I can go. But if you can only go up to here, that's fine. That'll improve over time as you continue to do this. The standard way that you see this most commonly performed is with a hip circle around the tops of your knees, such as this. I typically like it placed above my knees, but if you feel like just at the knees is fine, as long as it doesn't go lower than that. It's the same thing. You're going to engage your obliques, keep everything nice and neutral. Your hips are directly in line with your spine. Your ankles are directly underneath your butt. And your knees are bent. So this one, you're going to feel more resistance as the band is trying to pull you back into this resting position. All same cues apply as you do this, of making sure that your hips aren't rotating or twisting backwards, and you're not doing some weird Jane Fonda-like exercise where you're just showing off like this. And then the most progressed form would be a modified side plank version, where you are going to lift yourself up and incorporate even more obliques. You're going to open up this way, and where you're also going to feel this is not only the top leg, but also your bottom leg, as your bottom leg is externally rotating against the ground to ensure that you don't fall on your side. Now, one of the other errors that occurs when people are doing this is that people like to mash out a whole bunch of reps. Ideally, you should be taking your time as you open up and coming back down, as this is a stability and control exercise, not a get as many reps as you can exercise. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. All right, we're going to stay on the floor for the second exercise, as it is the plank that we're going to be doing. It's a common exercise used to create abdominal rigidity and strength that provides stability when you do your sport activities, as well as general strength training. So all you're going to need is some space and the floor mat. We are going to do the version of the plank where our elbows are down touching the floor, as such. Some key things to note is that your hips must stay neutral. They shouldn't be sagging like this or way up high where it deactivates your core. You're going to keep them somewhere in the middle. I also don't want to see shrugging up. Keep everything tight. Think about protraction and pushing into the floor. I like to think about it as you're bringing your rib cage down to create that neutral spine. Because sometimes, if you're thinking about trying to keep everything in line, that hip sagging tends to occur because you're not actively contracting anything. You're trying to keep that same position. So another thing that I like to do is engage your glutes, squeeze them just a tiny bit through so that it brings your pelvis into alignment. And if that proves too difficult, one of the regressions that you can do is simply a push-up plank, where you set up like you're about to do a push-up, but instead of going down, you're going to just keep this. Same cues apply, except now that your arms are fully extended. And then, if you feel like you've progressed enough, you can do you can do plank up downs, which is simply combining the two. You're gonna do normal planks for however long you want. You're gonna move up into a push-up plank, back down. All the key things to consider are making sure that your hips aren't moving around and shifting too much as you move in and out of those positions. And even if you're doing the singular positions, you want to make sure that your hips aren't sagging as well, because that's the biggest thing we have to worry about. All right, our final exercise that we're going to be doing on the floor is just your simple push-up. Despite its simplicity, it is one of the most effective tools in any program to develop upper body strength, muscular size, as well as muscular endurance if you so choose. All you're going to need is some more space and a floor mat, and then we're going to talk over how to do it correctly, and then I'm going to show you different ways to do it if you feel like you need to adjust. So the standard push-up is your hands are going to be just slightly outside of shoulder width apart, or wherever you feel the most comfortable. That's going to be dependent on how you feel is best for your body type. So I have fairly short arms, so I don't need to go super wide out. You're going to make sure your core is engaged. You bring your rib cage down and you keep everything tight. You're going to slowly descend, push up, descend, and push up. One of the ways that we ensure you do this correctly as well as safely is proper mechanics during the descent. So to make it easier to see, I'm going to show you right here that, say this is my push-up position right here. A common area you're going to see across a lot of gyms and even a lot of workout programs is that a lot of people tend to flare like this. Flare their elbows out as they go down, or start with this really wide position. You're going to notice that as you come into this position that's wider, that you're going to feel a lot more stress placed on your rear deltoids back here. And that could be a problem because that takes away where the stress is supposed to be felt properly, which is your pecs, and depending on the width of your push-up position, your triceps. So one of the ways we can modify this, so if you feel like a standard push-up is too easy, is with a resistance band or any external load such as a weighted backpack or a weight vest. Simply, you're just going to make sure that the resistance you choose is securely wrapped or placed on your back. In the instance of this band, it's going to be right behind where my pecs would be, just underneath my shoulders right here. And so this provides additional resistance in case you don't have any other way to load. Same cues still apply. Down, up, down, up. And if they are available to you, you can choose heavier bands. Just make sure that these bands are placed securely on your back as well as around your hands so that they don't hurt you if they happen to slip. We're going to be moving up for our regression of this if a normal push-up's too hard. All right, one of the ways that we can regress a push-up is through an incline push-up. All you need is a sturdy implement to press up against, and one of the ways that it helps is that during a normal push-up, if you're not strong enough to support your whole body weight, this helps alleviate some of that by placing less of your body on top of your shoulders and chest. So as such, all you're gonna do is step back just a tiny bit, or a lot of bit actually, depending on how tall you are. You're gonna assume the proper push-up width for your hands. You're gonna do the same thing, except this time at an angle. All the same cues apply for executing the technique, which basically means that 45-degree or somewhere within that range angle of your arms as you descend, and making sure that your core is engaged and your glutes are engaged to prevent your hips from sagging, and making sure that they don't sag forward first rather than your chest falling forward. All right, moving on. All right, we're going to be standing up for this next exercise. This is the back squat. Typically, we're gonna use a barbell for this, but for the sake of this video, with all things considered, considering the current situation, we're gonna pretend that this unassuming broom is going to be your 7-foot steel barbell. All right, for the back squat, we're gonna place this weight, in this case the broom, right on top of our traps. If you can kind of see, it's not too low on my back, like your low bar squat if you've seen powerlifting before, but it's not cranked up close to your neck. They're just placed right on top of your traps, and to make sure that they're securely placed there, you're going to retract your scaps, pull them back. You can also think about squeezing your chest open, right? Squeeze your chest open, keep your back tight, and kind of pull that weight down as if you're trying to break it. Now, depending on your equipment, you might need to adjust to make sure that you're not pulling too hard so that it doesn't break. But anyway, once you have that figured out, as far as hand placement, you can either go super wide if you have shoulder considerations, or if you have no worries, you can stay fairly narrow. We're going to start by taking a comfortable stance that we can squat with. Usually I like to say start at hips width apart for your feet, and then rotate your feet or toes slightly out in external rotation. Now, with all things considered, you might have to adjust from this one, as personal background is important. What's your history of injury, if you have any, as well as differences in squat stance for males and females. Due to the anatomy, males can get away with more narrow squat stances, while females can typically be seen having wider squat stances. But regardless, find one that's comfortable for you, as there's no one golden squat stance. So once you have that figured out, before you even begin to descend, you are going to retract again. Keep your chest open, not up. That's another common cue that's miscorrect, or that's incorrect, as placing your chest up, if you can kind of see, places my back into hyperextension. What you want to do is actually bring your rib cage down, squeeze your chest open, like you're trying to show off your Superman logo. That way, not only is your upper back tight, but your lower back is protected by your core rigidity created by bringing your rib cage down. Second, we're going to take a deep breath and breathe into our stomachs. We're going to keep the knees tracking over our toes the whole time as we squeeze the knees out into external rotation. And we're going to descend by breaking simultaneously at the hips and the knees. One more time. I'm going to do it from a front angle where you can see that my knees track directly where my toes would be. Okay? Common errors that could be technical or strength related is as you come down, your knees are fine, but probably due to a lack of tightness or strength, you might start to collapse inward. So to prevent that, always think about keeping your knees out the whole time. Another common cue to avoid is sitting back. A lot of people are incorrectly, or I would say misguided in how to do a squat because they're told to sit back. What happens then is that you push your hips way too far back. That creates a lot of torque place or experience at the lower back because of how far the weight being placed on your body is away from that fulcrum, which is your hips. I'm gonna do it from this side. See how far away it is from where it's distributed versus keeping everything in line, keeping everything close. All right. One of the ways you can progress this, regress it if you can't reach full depth, is have a box. Now I don't have one right now, but if you can imagine a box, you would want it to where it would be at parallel, where your knees and your hips are directly parallel to each other. So that's gonna look something like this. See how I'm still reaching depth, but I'm not trying to do that by pushing back too. You're gonna set the box up to whatever height is parallel for you. You're gonna stop there and then come up, squat down, find that box, touch it, and go. Make sure when you do this, you're not relaxing as you touch the box, as you sit on it, and then you rock back into it with momentum. You're going to stay tight the whole time. Keep contact with the box, but then come up. And then a way to progress this is a more specific one, but it is the overhead squat. This is commonly seen in Olympic weightlifting, and it's going to be a wide snatch grip. All you're doing is placing this over your head, keeping that same mechanics of keep your knees striking over your toes, and you're descending with a simultaneous break at the hips and ankles. All right. One of the biggest cues before we move on to remember that ensures that you keep executing whatever variation of a squat safely is place or weight centered at your midfoot. So if you look down at your feet, wherever your shoes are tied, where the laces are, you want to think about keeping the weight centered there in your midfoot. You can think about it as keeping your weight centered on your arch, because what happens is, say you do sit back, and then all your weight shifted onto your heels, you might fall backwards. Similarly, if your weight shifted forward onto your toes, and then your heels come up, you might fall forward. So the biggest cues to remember when doing squats is keep your weight centered at your midfoot, keep your core engaged by keeping your ribcage down, simultaneous break at the hips, knees, and ankles, and sit down. All right, moving on to our final exercise. Our final exercise for today is the single arm dumbbell snatch. These are commonly seen in CrossFit workouts and events, and it is an exercise intended to help develop power output as well as improved motor coordination in a skilled movement. Keep in mind this is a technical movement, so proper practice is required to ensure safety, and we're going to talk about that moving forward. Unlike the other exercises, we're not going to start with the main progression, which is the single arm dumbbell power snatch. We're going to start from its regressed form, work into the normal one that we're going to talk about, and then its most advanced form. Because this one, as a skilled movement, you need to start at its most basic level first as you move up to the more advanced level. So we're going to move back out real quick. You're going to take any dumbbell in your hand, and the first one we're going to do is called the single arm dumbbell muscle snatch. And what the word muscle implies is that you're using your muscles to muscle it up. You're not using an explosive movement to get it up. So what this looks like is you're going to have one dumbbell in your hand. You are going to contract your core to make sure that it's tight. You're going to hinge and slightly squat down until it reaches just at your knees. You're going to look up. You are going to keep it close as you move it out. For additional balance, you can hold your arm out, your free-floating arm out to the side. One more time. You are going to have a slight squat hinge hybrid pattern here. You're going to keep the weight close as you just use your arm to muscle it up, essentially. So the key thing for this is that you're engaging your core, and then you're pushing through your quads and your glutes vertically, and you're keeping the bar close, because if you swing it up or swing it out, that creates a lot of distance away from you and the weight. And if you can kind of see, you don't want it to swing out and create an arc. Well, the way you want to do it is kind of single arm upright row it and then snap it up. You don't want to dip your elbows and then press it up. It's more, you keep it going in one fluid movement. The fluidity of these movements will take some time to develop. So if you need to row and then think of it as a row and a press first, do that and try to make it more fluid as you get better. Now, I suggest before moving on to any of these other ones is that you have some stable shoes, some flat stable shoes to make sure you're not wobbly and you're not easily off-centered. The next one is the normal one we're going to talk about is the dumbbell, single arm dumbbell power snatch. So, same setup as before, but instead this time, it's going to be a more violent explosion and whip upwards. As such. So one more time. I'm going to try to go a little slowly. You're going to triple extend at the hips, knees, and ankles as you come up, and then drop down. You can start a little bit wider or narrower in the start, but you're going to land a little bit wider in athletic stance. So with the power term, this is commonly referred to as power because you want to be powerful and explosive enough to get it and catch it high. So pull high, catch high. Now this is when keeping the weight close is really important, because if you swing it out, you're going to look weird, but you're also going to land on the balls of your feet forward, which may increase risk of injury at the very worst, but at the least, you're just incorrectly executing the movement. You want to extend primarily through the quads, as your quads are your primary sources of vertical propulsion rather than your hips, because your hips do more than vertical propulsion, they also do horizontal, meaning forward and a little bit out. Okay? So one more time, here, extend at the hips, knees, and ankles, and drop down. Okay? Then the most advanced version of this will be a single arm dumbbell full snatch or squat snatch or simply snatch, depending whatever you feel comfortable calling it. Essentially, you're going to catch this in a deep overhead squat that is single arm. Okay, so it's the same premise as the other ones. You're just building on top. You're going to pull high, but catch low. Okay. One more time, pull high, catch low. So if you want to think about it, you're essentially, after it comes up a certain amount, you're pulling yourself in to that position mixed with like a drop squat. So you're using the weight of the dumbbell you're using as a counterbalance to you getting down into that receding position. So I'm going to do it one more time. Pull high, and at a certain point, pull yourself and drop under into a deep overhead squat. I'm going to demonstrate it on the other side for you now. Pull high, catch low. Okay? And so, what I want to leave you with is that the importance of proper movement is key, because the further away a weight is when you're doing explosive movements, the more energy it accumulates for when you want to catch it. So basically, the further out it is, the heavier it is. if you hold a weight near you, it's easier to hold out and control versus out here. It's a little bit harder. And when you're dealing with dynamic movements, keeping it close to your body allows you to stay more in control and connected to the weight versus out here, where you have to either run forward and catch up to it and probably not end up landing in a safe position. And this is especially important as you progress and get stronger. As the heavier the weight is, the more strength and control you're going to need, and the more emphasis there is on proper technique. All right, that is the final exercise. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Ron Saavedra one last time, signing out. You guys have a good time. Stay